Good day students, today I'll be starting the new unit, that is human physiology, and in that the first chapter what we're going to see today is digestion and absorption. Okay, and I'll be reading the NCERT line by line, and I want you people to follow with me so that you can understand it clearly. Okay, what is digestion? We know, right, we'll be taking our food for energy like growth and all. So what happens when we take the food? The food molecules are being crushed by using our teeth and it is formed into nutrients. The final product is nutrients, and that nutrients is being used by various parts of the body to utilize for it for energy like and various activities. That is called as digestion. The concept of digestion is this only. We'll go into the lesson. And food is one of the basic requirement of all living organisms, and the major components of our food are carbohydrates, proteins and fats. So what this line tells us is that food is one of the basic requirements. Food only we live. We eat food to live, right? And yes, and whatever food we take, the major components present in them are carbohydrates, proteins and fats. And now you people can ask me, what about vitamins and minerals and all? Yes, we need vitamins and minerals, but in smaller quantity only. Compared to these three, the vitamins and minerals can be taken in lesser amount. Okay, we'll see the next line. Vitamins and minerals are also required in small quantities only, as I said, and the food provides energy and organic materials for growth and repair of tissues. Food not only gives us energy, but it also helps to us to grow, that is growth, and also repair of tissues. Repair of tissues like when the tissues have been repaired like due to reasons like external and internal injuries also. So the new tissues should be generated, right? For that, this food helps us to repair the tissues. And the water we take plays an important role in the metabolic processes. So water is one of the major and important thing. Whatever process or whatever activities takes place into our digestive system, water is required. So it is required in plays an important role in metabolic processes. So metabolic processes like glycolysis. Glycolysis is splitting of glucose. For that it is used, water is used. I'm just giving the examples for this metabolic processes and all. Glycolysis, catabolism, anabolism. Catabolism is like breakdown of the smaller into simpler, and then building up is called as anabolism. Okay, and also prevents dehydration of the body. Dehydration is like excess fluid loss. So what happens when our body is dehydrated? The individual will be feeling very fatigue and very tired, and also leads to various signs and symptoms and all. So there should one should be always hydrated, like by drinking water. Okay, biomacromolecules in the food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. Okay, what is biomicromolecule? It's like they indicate here is like proteins, carbohydrates, fats, nucleic acids, and also whatever food which has carbohydrates, these fats and all, it cannot be utilized by our body in the direct form, like it cannot be taken as carbohydrates. So they have what happens is they'll be broken down into simpler forms of them. We'll see. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substance in the digestive system. So this process of conversion of complex food molecules like what? Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and then nucleic acids, etc. They should be converted into simple absorbable forms, and that is called as digestion. And that process is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. Mechanical is like whenever the first step what we do in digestion is like when we take a particular food, what we do, we started by crushing it, chewing it, like that is called as mechanical. It's like chewing, crushing and also that is mechanical process. So biochemical here is biochemical. When we swallow the food, what happens? It passes into the esophagus, stomach, small intestine. So various process occurs there, right? So with the help of enzymes. So biochemical methods means with the use of enzymes. We'll see about digestive system now. The human digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. Alimentary canal means from mouth to anus only, it is alimentary canal. So, our digestive system consists of alimentary canal and associated glands. Associated glands means whichever glands is being used in this digestive process. So, that is associated glands. And we'll see about the alimentary canal now. The alimentary canal begins with an anterior opening, the mouth, and it opens posteriorly through the anus. So, anterior means front and then posterior back through their anus. And the mouth leads to the buccal cavity or a oral cavity. This is the inside our cheek is called as buccal cavity or oral cavity. And the oral cavity has a number of teeth. Yes, so there are number of teeth. Like how many teeth are present in a human adult? It's like 32 teeth. And a muscular tongue. Why it's called as muscular tongue? Because the tongue doesn't possess any bones, right? Is there any bones in your tongue? No, right? So that is called as muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in our socket of jaw bone. We'll see. Okay. The socket, like there are holes in that which our tooth is embedded. Embedded means sticked into the jaw socket of jaw. So this type of attachment, which type of attachment? The tooth is sticked into the socket of jaw, and that is called as thecodont. So this is very important and you can expect a NEET question. So this is called as thecodont. Okay. The majority of the mammals, including human beings, form two sets of teeth during their lifetime. Yes, I think you people know it, right? Like we'll be having two set of teeth. Like as soon as we born, we will be having no teeth, and after few months or few days, we'll be having our milk teeth. Milk teeth means it will fall down. So it is temporary teeth, and later years that particular set of teeth will change into a permanent teeth. Like permanent teeth means they won't fall. Okay, we'll see. And a set of temporary teeth or a deciduous teeth is replaced by a permanent or an adult teeth. So this type of dentation is called as diaphodont. Di means two, so it is called as diaphodont. Like what? We'll be having two sets of teeth in our lifetime. And human adult has 32 permanent teeth, which are of 4 different types. So whichever teeth is present in our buccal cavity, there are 4 types. What are they? We'll see. And that dentation is called as heterodont, because hetero means 4. So that represents the 4 different types of teeth in our buccal cavity. We'll see what are they. Incisors, canine, premolars and molars. We'll see in the diagram. See, they will be in this order only. Incisors, canine, premolars and molars. Incisors, it is a front teeth. This is the front teeth. This canine is the side teeth. So this premolar is inner side, and the last one is the molars, which is present in the back side. So this represents the back side of the backside teeth. So incisor is the front teeth, canine is the side teeth, and premolars, it is the inner side, and it is also side but it goes inner, and the molar is the back side. Okay, this type of dentation is called as what? Heterodont. Hetero means 4. So it represents the 4 different types of the teeth. Okay. Arrangement of this teeth in each half of the upper and the lower jaw is in the order like as I said, incisors, canine, premolars and molars, and which is represented by a dental formula in the human. The dental formula is 2123 by 2123. Okay, if you add this, you will be getting 8 only. So 8 into 18, 16 only now. But normally the human will be having 32. So what this dental formula represent? This dental formula represent only one side of our buccal cavity, one side of our teeth, like upper and the lower are only one side, but this side is 16 plus 16 will be getting 32, but this dental formula represents only one side, that is upper and the lower side of the jaw of one side only. The hard chewing surface of the teeth is made up of enamel. So our each tooth is being covered with a thin layer called as enamel. This enamel will help us in chewing and all. But without this enamel, what happens? Our teeth will be very sensitive and we cannot take hot or cold items. So enamel is very important, and which is also helps in the mastication of food. Mastication of the food means like crushing and chewing the food. Crushing and mixing the food with saliva is called as mastication of the food. Okay, the tongue is a freely movable muscular organ. Yes, as I said, muscular because doesn't possess any bone, and attached to the floor of the oral cavity by frenulum. We'll see frenulum. Where is it? So this is the tongue, and this tongue is attached to the lower floor of our buccal cavity, and that attachment is called as frenulum. By help of the frenulum only our tongue is attached to the floor of the buccal cavity. The upper surface of the tongue has a small projections called as papillae. Okay, if you see your tongue in a mirror, you'll see you'll find some small little bumps present in the top of the tongue. So that type of small bumps are called as papillae. So they also contain taste buds, and these taste buds are present in the edge of our tongue. And papillae is like small projection or small little bumps which is present in our tongue. Okay, the oral cavity, now this buccal cavity is over. The oral cavity leads into the short pharynx. Short pharynx means it is a common passage. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. So for food and air, the common pathway is called as pharynx. The esophagus means food pipe. Food pipe is called as esophagus, and the trachea is called the windpipe or the air pipe, opens into the pharynx. Okay, a cartilaginous flap called as epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis, that is the opening of the windpipe, during the swallowing. Okay, we'll see in this picture. This is esophagus, right? Okay, here the cartilaginous flap is present here. So that is called as epiglottis. So there is a flap and a glottis is present in the windpipe. This is glottis. This area is called as glottis. Okay, this epiglottis will be like example of window. Window only one side is attached, right? Only so only one side it will be attached, this flap, and other side will be like free movement, and this only prevents the entry of food into the glottis. So when the food enters below the oral cavity, it leads to the esophagus and windpipes. Okay, but it should enter only into the epiglottis, because it enters into epiglottis only. It is the opening of the esophagus. Esophagus is only the food pipe, so food should enter here. So what happens, this flap opens as soon as when we swallow the food, so that it doesn't enter into the windpipe, that is the opening of the windpipe is called as glottis. And the esophagus is a thin and a long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax and the diaphragm, and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called as stomach. Okay, the esophagus is thin, yes, and it passes into the neck region. This is called as neck region. So this is the neck region. This is the neck region, and it passes through the thorax region. This is thorax, and the diaphragm region. This is diaphragm, and leads into a J-shaped, see, J-shaped stomach. So J-shaped stomach, neck region, thorax, diaphragm, and neck J-shaped stomach region. Okay, a muscular sphincter regulates the opening of the esophagus into the stomach. Okay, there is one sphincter which is present in the opening of the stomach and at the ending of the esophagus. Okay, you can ask me why the sphincter is present. We'll see first where is the sphincter is present. A sphincter is present here. See, this is the ending of the esophagus and this is the opening of the stomach. So there is one sphincter called as gastroesophageal sphincter. Okay, sphincter. Okay, why the sphincter is present here? It regulates the entry of the food. Okay, when the food enters into the esophagus, it will be like coming straight and falls into the stomach. No. So what happens? There should be some gate, right, to regulate or slow down the process. So this sphincter acts as a gate, like it contracts when the food doesn't comes and it relaxes when the food enters into the stomach. So it regulates the movement of the food which enters into the stomach. So the first sphincter in the gastric system, the digestive system, is called as Gastroesophageal Sphincture, which regulates the opening of the esophagus in the stomach. The stomach, which is located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has 4 major parts. The J-shaped structure only. The J-shaped structure has 4 major parts. What are they? The cardiac portion, and then a fundic region, and the body, and the pyloric portion. We'll see the cardiac portion. Cardiac portion is which connects to the esophagus. So this is not the first part, but the fundus is the first part, but esophagus directly connects to the cardiac portion only. We'll see. Cardiac portion opens into the esophagus, and a fundic region, it is the first part of the stomach, and the body is the central part, and the pyloric region opens into the first part of the small intestines. This is the pyloric, which opens into small first part of the intestine. Which is the first part of small intestine? It is duodenum. The small intestine is distinguishable into 3 regions. What are they? A C-shaped duodenum. The stomach is J-shaped, but the duodenum is C-shaped, and a long coiled middle portion, jejunum. The second part of the small intestine is jejunum, and the last part is ileum. We'll see where is this present. All these parts are present. This is the J-shaped stomach, and the J-shaped stomach, and the small intestine starts, right? C-shaped duodenum. It is the first part of the small intestine, and the second part is the middle coiled jejunum. See the middle coiled jejunum, and the last part of the small intestine is ileum. Ileum is highly coiled. Highly coiled means there are so many coils present together. So it is the last part of the ileum. And the opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by a pyloric sphincter. Yes, in before slide we saw the first sphincter, right, in between the esophagus and the stomach. So the second sphincter is like ending of the stomach and opening of the small intestine, that is here. So this from this the duodenum starts. So in this there is one sphincter called as pyloric sphincter. Why it is called as pyloric means because the last part of the stomach is the pyloric region, so it is named after that, pyloric region. Pyloric sphincter. Sphincter means it relaxes and contracts. Ileum opens into the large intestine. Ileum is the third part of the small intestine, so it automatically opens into the first part of large intestine. That is very important. Okay, it consists of the large intestine consists of cecum, colon and rectum. What are they? Cecum, colon and rectum. But whereas in small intestine it is duodenum, jejunum and ileum. The cecum is a small bind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. I think you people know that we'll be having some microorganisms present inside our stomach, right? That microorganisms are like useful to us. Not useful means given as a symbiotic microorganisms. Symbiotic means showing some mutual activity, like benefited to them like we are the host, and also benefited to us like it will produce some resistant and all, like various, if some other organisms are infected by some organisms infect us, they'll show some resistance. So the symbiotic microorganisms are present where? In our cecum only. Cecum, it is the first part of large intestine. A narrow finger-like tubular projection is called as the vermiform appendix, which is the vestigial organ. Vestigial means the particular organ is present in us but it is of no use. So that organ is present but doesn't possess any useful activities to us. We will see where is the vermiform appendix now. Okay, this is cecum. Cecum where the microorganisms are present, and it leads to a projection called as vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ. And the cecum opens into the colon. And the second part of the large intestine is colon, and the colon is divided into 4 parts. What are they? It is ascending, transverse, descending, and the sigmoidal colon. The descending part opens into rectum, which opens out through the anus. So the last part is the rectum. This rectum opens into anus, which is out. Colon is of 4 types, right? Ascending colon, which is from down to up, and then transverse is horizontally, and then descending is from top to bottom, and after that there is a sigmoidal colon. This is sigmoidal colon. Below descending colon, it is a sigmoidal colon, and that sigmoidal colon passes into rectum, and that rectum opens out as a anus. We saw all the parts whichever is used in our digestive process, and we'll see some layers are also present in our digestive system. The wall of the alimentary canal. Alimentary canal means what I said, it is from mouth to anus. So from alimentary canal, from esophagus to rectum possess 4 layers. There are some layers which is present throughout this alimentary canal. We'll see the first one is serosa, muscularis, submucosa, and mucosa. Serosa is the first and the outermost layer, and the next one is muscularis. Okay, I'll read this. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of a thin mesothelium. So it is made up of a thin mesothelium, very thin epithelium of the visceral organs. Visceral means, what is that visceral? Visceral means internal. Visceral organs means internal organs. So what are the internal organs? Like liver, kidney, pancreas, etc. So these are the epithelium of the internal organs with some connective tissues. Connective tissues means these type of tissues give support. So they are useful in supporting. And muscularis is formed by smooth muscles. So muscularis, the next layer is called as muscularis, and that is formed by smooth muscles only, usually arranged in an inner circular and an outer longitudinal region. They are arranged in 2 ways, like one is inner circular, in this circular, and then outer longitudinal means like this, outer longitudinal. And oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions. Oblique means slant. In slanting position, there are some muscles which is present in some regions only. And the submucosal layer is formed by loose connective tissue. Submucosa here. The first one we saw serosa, and then muscularis. It contains 2 forms. One is inner circular and longitudinal. And submucosa, this is formed by loose connective tissues. But here it is muscularis, it is smooth muscles, made up of smooth muscles. Serosa, it's like some connective tissues only. It is very loose, this submucosa. In this loose connective tissues, what are present are nerves are present, blood and lymph vessels are present. In duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. So in this submucosa, there are also some glands, and the innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is the mucosa. So mucosa is the innermost layer, and lumens means empty space. See, this is an empty space, right? So that represents the lumen. So what are the 4 layers? The first one is serosa. Serosa is of connective tissues, some connective tissues. Muscularis is of smooth muscles, that is 2 ways, inner circular and outer longitudinal. And the submucosa, it's like loose connective tissues, and mucosa is the innermost lining of the lumen. This layer forms irregular folds in the stomach and a small finger-like projections called as villi in the small intestine. So this represents the small intestine. See, there are minute or various numerous of small finger-like projections, and that is called as this pink color represents called as villi. So this villi will help in the absorption of the food. Okay, the function of the villi, it's like absorption of food, and the cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called as microvilli, giving the brush border appearance. Okay, and see, this is one villi. This minute projection I have taken one, that is one villi, and that one villi produces a small micro. This itself micro, and see it produces micro means smaller than this. A micro projection is produced by this particular villi, and that is called as microvilli. See, this is microvilli. And they'll be like brush border appearance. Paint brush, see, it represents like a paint brush. And these modification increase the surface area enormously. Okay, villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessels called as lacteal. Where is lacteal? See, this is one villi. So what they are telling, network of capillaries and one large lymph nodes. One large lymph vessel is called as lacteal. Okay, and the mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus and which helps in lubrication. Okay, see, this is microvilli, and below microvilli there is one cells called as goblet cells. These goblet cells produces mucus. So not only our salivary gland produces mucus, but also this goblet cells which is present inside our stomach produce mucus. For what? For easy friction. Without any friction, the food should be digested and absorbed, like to help in lubrication. Lubrication is like without any friction. Mucosa also forms a gland in the stomach and the crypts in between the bases of the villi in the intestine called as crypts of Lindbergh. See, in the space it's called as the crypts of Lindbergh. This is one villi, this is one villi, this is one villi, and the space in between them are called as crypts of Lindbergh. All the 4 layers show modifications in different parts of the alimentary canal. So there are different amount of layers present in the alimentary canal. In previous slides we saw what is the alimentary canal. It's from mouth to anus, and we saw all the organs which are present in that. And the next one is digestive glands. So whichever glands are produced by our digestive system for digestion. The digestive glands associated with the alimentary canal include the salivary gland. The first one and the foremost gland is in the digestive system is the salivary gland, and the second one is liver, and then pancreas. As we all know, liver is also a gland, largest gland in our body, and also the pancreas. Okay, saliva is mainly produced by 3 pairs of the salivary glands. So have you all wondered like where does this saliva comes from in our mouth? It comes out from the 3 pairs of the glands. 3 pairs means 6. So it comes off the glands. We'll see which of the glands produces saliva. The first one is the parotids, which is present in our cheeks, this side, cheek side. This is the parotid gland which is close to our ear, parotid gland. And the second one is the submaxillary or the submandibular, that is lower jaw here. See, in this diagram, it is the lower side of the jaw is the submandibular gland, and the last one is the sublingual. Sublingual means under the tongue. See, where is it? Here. So the 3 glands produces the saliva in our buccal cavity. Okay, these glands situated just outside the buccal cavity secretes the salivary juice, that is the saliva, into the buccal cavity or the oral cavity. Okay, we saw like where how the saliva are produced. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing 1.2 to 1.5 kg. So what is the weight of a liver? It's like 1.2 to 1.5 kg, and it is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has 2 lobes. Abdominal cavity, this is abdominal cavity, and which have 2 lobes. See, there are the 2 lobes, and which represents a liver, and inside the liver or below the liver it is one organ called as gall bladder. The hepatic lobules are the structural and the functional units of liver containing hepatic cells and arranged in the form of the cords. So hepatic, wherever or whenever you see hepatic means liver. So hepatic lobules This is a liver and the hepatic lobules. Like when we dissect it or when we see it closely, there will be like this. This is called as the hepatic lobules. So these hepatic lobules are the functional unit of what? Liver. Containing liver cells. So this is made up of hepatic cells. So there are all hepatic cells in the hepatic lobules and arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath. Sheath means outer covering. Sheath means outer covering. Outer covering. Okay, called the Glissen's capsule. So when we look at each each lobule is covered with a outer layer called as Glissen's capsule. Okay, and this is a cord, one cord. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells. We all know since it is a gland, it should secrete something, right? So this liver secretes the bile. See, the bile secreted by the hepatic cells means liver cells passes through the hepatic duct. So how it comes to the next organ? Through a pipe. So that pipe is called as hepatic duct, and it's stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called as gall bladder. We saw in the early slide, right? So below liver it is a gall bladder which keeps the secreted bile keeps the concentrated form of bile in that, and the duct in the gall bladder. So duct in the liver is called as hepatic duct, and the duct in the gall bladder is called as the cystic duct. Along with the hepatic duct from the liver forms the common bile duct. This is the gall bladder, and the duct from the gall bladder comes here. That is called as cystic duct, and the duct from the liver is this, which comes here and meets here. So when these both join, and that is called as common bile duct because it contains bile. So that duct is called as common bile duct. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together in the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct. So the bile duct, this is a common bile duct, right? This comes down, and this is what? This is the C-shaped duodenum. Inside the duodenum, it is an organ present called as pancreas. See, inside the two limbs of the duodenum, the pancreas is present. So pancreas also produce what? Secrete pancreatic juice. When this bile juice and this pancreatic juice from the pancreatic duct meets, and that part is called as hepatopancreatic duct because this contains bile, this contains pancreatic juice. Combined together, they are known as hepatopancreatic duct, and which is guarded by the sphincter called as sphincter of Oddi. Sphincter means, as I said, it like helps in relaxation, contraction, right? So there is a sphincter here. I mean, closing of the pancreas and opening of the duodenum, that is called as sphincter of Oddi. The pancreas is a compound, both exocrine and endocrine. Exocrine means with gland, and this is ductless, without gland. Elongated organ situated between the limbs. Yes, limbs, two limbs of the C-shaped duodenum. And the exocrine. Exocrine means with glands. So with glands they produce what all they produce? They secrete pancreatic juice which contains the enzyme, but the without gland portion secretes hormones, insulin, and also glucagon. Okay, and the next what we're gonna see is digestion of food. Digestion means how the food particles are digested into the how the food particles are digested by a digestive system. Okay, the process of digestion is accompanied by mechanical and chemical processes. As I said earlier in the first slide and the beginning of the first chapter, mechanical means chewing, and then biochemical means using enzymes. Okay, the buccal cavity performs the two major functions. So the digestive starts in our buccal cavity itself. Two functions. What are they? Mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. Mastication means crushing of the food, chewing of the food and mixing it with the saliva, and also facilitation of swallowing, making the food particles swallow easily, making a way to swallow it easily. And the teeth and the tongue, with the help of the saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. So teeth and the tongue, they help in mixing the saliva with the food particles and mix up the food thoroughly. Okay, mucus in the saliva. So the saliva contains mucus, right? So that mucus helps in lubricating. Lubricating means without any friction and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. Adhering means sticking the crushed food particles into a bolus like a round shaped structure to form a round. With all the particles we take it separately. What happens? The tooth and the tongue with the help of the saliva mixes the food and masticate it properly. Mucus in the saliva helps in lubricating, that is without any friction, and also adhering means sticking the masticated particles into a bolus, a round shaped structure. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx. Pharynx means common pathway, and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. Deglutition means swallowing only. Okay. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus by a successive waves of muscle contraction called as peristalsis. Okay. This line represents what this line tells us means the food doesn't go in a straight order, but it goes in a wavy of muscular contraction. Wavy means like this. This kind of movement is called as peristalsis. So the food goes in a wavy muscular contraction movement, and that is called as peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincture, what is that? Which is like helps in contraction and relaxation. Controls the passage of the food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity. Oral cavity means all the three glands, right? That parotid, submandibular and sublingual. These glands produces saliva. So that saliva is rich in electrolytes like sodium, calcium, potassium and enzymes. Okay, and salivary amylase and lysosome. This salivary amylase helps in breakdown of carbohydrates. Okay, and these lysosome enzymes helps to kill bacteria if anything is present in the food. So it kills bacteria. This kills the bacteria if the bacteria is present in the food what we take. Okay. The chemical process of digestion is initiated by the oral cavity by a hydrolytic enzyme like presence of water, that is saliva here, of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary enzyme. So whatever food we take, it will be rich in carbohydrates, right? So that carbohydrates breakdown will start in the oral cavity itself with the help of salivary amylase, which helps in the breakdown of the carbohydrates. About 30% of the starch, that is carbohydrates, kind of a carbohydrate. So about 30% of the starch is hydrolyzed by this enzyme. Which enzyme? Salivary amylase in pH 6.8 into a disaccharide maltose. Maltose is a simpler form of the carbohydrates, and lysosome present in the saliva acts as an antibacterial agent that prevents the infections. As I said, if there is a presence of any bacteria or virus in the food which we take, this lysosomes will kill that. So starch in the presence of salivary amylase, that which is useful in breaking down the carbohydrates, in the pH 6.8 forms into maltose, and about 30% of the starch is hydrolyzed in mouth itself. Okay, gastric glands have three major types of cells. Okay, gastric glands, three cells. The gastric glands is made up of three cells. What are they? The first one is mucous neck cells. Mucus, the word itself says mucus, so this secretes mucus. Mucous neck cells secrete mucus, and the peptic or the chief cells secretes what? Proenzyme pepsinogen. Proenzyme means this is in inactive form. Inactive form means it doesn't involve in any chemical or any processes, any activities in digestion. So for taking part in the activities, it should be converted into active form. Since it is in proactive form, we will see how it is converted into active form in later slides. And the third cell is parietal or oxygenetic cell, which secretes HCl, an intrinsic factor for absorption of vitamin B12. So it produces two. What are they? HCl and intrinsic factors. There are three cells which this gastric glands has. What is that? Mucous neck cells secretes mucus, and the peptic cells which secretes the pepsinogen, which is in an inactive form only, and the parietal cells secretes the HCl and intrinsic factors. The stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. So when you take your breakfast and in between the breakfast and the lunch, the duration is like 4 to 5 hours, right? So that's why we are advised to take breakfast at particular time like 9 o'clock and then followed by 1 or 1:30 and then night by 8 o'clock. So what happens? Usually the food is stored by our stomach up to 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by a churning movement mixing very well with the saliva and then all the mucus which is produced by the mucous neck cells and by HCl, and then what else in the previous slide we saw, right? Pepsinogen, which will convert into active form. So all this type of food particles is converted and mixed nicely. So churning means mixing. Mixing continuously is called as churning, and of the muscular wall, and that is called as chyme. Chyme is like partially digestive food particles. So the food particles have been partially means half it is digested. So that is called as chyme. And the proenzyme pepsinogen. Okay, pepsinogen is produced by which type of cells? It is peptic of chief cells. Since they are in inactive form, they should be converted into active form to take place in this digestion activity, right? So what happens? This pepsinogen on exposure with HCl is produced by which cells? Parietal cells. So this inactive pepsinogen reacts with HCl and they are converted into a active enzyme called as pepsin. The proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. Proteolytic means active enzyme of the stomach. So it become active now. So it will be involved in the digestive process of some conversion. We'll see like which is for what it is used. Pepsin converts proteins into proteases. Proteins are biomacromolecules and they convert into proteases, simple form of proteins. Proteases and peptones, these both are the simpler form of proteins. So this pepsin helps proteins to convert into proteases and peptones, which is a basic or the smaller part of this smaller absorbable thing. The mucus which is mucus is produced by mucous neck cells, and the bicarbonates present in the gastric juice plays an important role in lubrication. Lubrication we know, without any friction, and protection. Protections mean it protects the mucosal epithelium from excoriation by the highly concentrated HCl. Okay, this HCl is produced, right? This HCl and what happens? This mucus produced by mucus cells. This and bicarbonates plays an important role in lubrication. The first function is lubrication. First is lubrication and second one is giving protection, because this HCl will excoriate the mucous epithelium. To avoid that, this mucus and bicarbonates plays an important role. And HCl provides acidic pH, that is 1.8. Acidic means below 7, above 7 means it is alkaline, and neutral it is 7. And optimal for pepsins. Okay, renin is a proteolytic. Proteolytic means active, I said, right? Active enzyme formed in the gastric juice of infants, only infants. For what? Which helps in the digestion of the milk protein. So to convert the protein into simpler form, pepsin is used. Okay, in adults, in normal adults, but in babies like infants, which type of enzyme is used to convert or digest the proteins means renin. Okay, in babies it is renin which converts the protein or digests the milk proteins, and whereas in normal human adult it is pepsin. Okay, and a small amount of lipase is also secreted by the gastric gland. Okay, fine. Various type of movements are generated by the muscularis layers of the small intestine. Muscular layers, we saw, right? There are four types of layers. One is serosa, muscularis, and then mucosa, submucosa, etc. This muscular rayus consists of two, right? Circular, inner circular and outer longitudinal. So the various type of generated, the movements in the small intestine are generated by this type of layer only. Which type? Muscularis. Okay. These movements helps in the thorough mixing of the food with various secretions in the intestine. So there are various secretions, right? The gastric glands itself possess three types of cells which produce three types of enzymes. So what happens? This muscular movement of the muscular rayus helps the food to mix thoroughly again, and then mix with the secretion of the intestine and also facilitate digestion. Okay, the bile is secreted by the liver, pancreatic by pancreases, and pancreatic juice from pancreatis, and the intestinal juice from the intestine are the secretion released into the small intestine. So what are the secretion which comes in the small intestine is bile from liver, pancreatic juice from pancreas, and intestinal juice from intestine. Okay, pancreatic juice and the bile juice are released to the pancreatic juice, and the hepatic are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. Yes, we saw in previous slide. And the pancreatic juice, okay, the whichever what the pancreas secrete is pancreatic juice. That pancreatic juice contains like inactive enzymes. Inactive means pro-enzymes like pepsinogen. What are they? Like trypsinogen, it has trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxyl peptidases, amylases, lipases, and nucleases. Since they are in inactive form, they should be activated like in the presence of some enzymes, like how this pepsinogen is converted into pepsin with the help of a HCl. Same process applies here. These are activated by an enzyme called as enterokinase. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme called as enterokinase, secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin, and which in turn activates the other enzymes in the pancreatic juice. So all the enzymes which is present in the pancreatic juice are in inactive form. They are converted into active form in the help of enterokinase enzyme, which is secreted by the intestinal mucosa. The bile released into the duodenum. Now we'll see what are the bile is made up of. Bile contains bile pigments. Bile pigments means bilirubin and biliverdin, and also bile salts. There are also bile salts, cholesterol, and then phospholipids, but no enzymes. See what is our bile pigments? Nothing but bilirubin and biliverdin, and also bile salt, cholesterol, phospholipids, but no enzymes is present in the bile juice, which helps in the emulsification of fat and breaking down of the fat, that is breaking down of the fats into very small micelles, minute particle like this. This one is called as micelles, and also activates the lipases. The intestinal mucosal epithelium has goblet cells. We saw, right? So this was microvilli and this was goblet cells which secrete mucus for lubrication and all. So goblet cells which secrete mucus. The secretion of the brush border cells. Brush border is this. Okay, this was microvilli, a brush border appearance, and this was goblet cells. So the secretion of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretions of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or a succus entericus. So the secretion from this and the secretion from the goblet cells together they constitute and represent as a intestinal juice or a succus entericus. Okay. This juice contains a variety of enzymes like disaccharides. So it is rich in disaccharides. Disaccharides means simpler form of carbohydrates. Dipeptidases, simpler form of proteins. Lipases, fats. Nucleases mean nucleic acids. The mucus along with the bicarbonate from the pancreas protects the intestinal mucosa like from excoriation of HCl, right? As well as provide an alkaline medium for the enzymatic activities. It also protects the intestinal mucosa but also provides an alkaline medium for the enzymatic activities. Enzymatic activities means in which the enzymes are used in conversion of the biomacromolecules into the simpler forms. Submucosal glands also helps in this. Submucosal glands means inner layer of the most inner layer, innermost layer is called as a submucosal, and in that there are also submucosal glands. Example, Brunner's gland, which helps in this type of conversions. Okay, proteins, proteases, peptones is partially, these are the partially hydrolyzed proteins. In the chyme, what I said, partially digested food particles, right, reaching the intestine are acted upon by a proteolytic enzyme. Proteolytic means active enzyme. The formula is given here. Proteins, peptidogenous proteases in the presence of trypsinogen, trypsin, chymotrypsin will give dipeptides. These are activated form, but inactivated form of this is, for trypsin it is trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen for chymotrypsinogen. These are activated by an enzyme called as enterokinase. And for carbohydrates, it is in the presence of amylases, which is present in our saliva itself, which is used to break down the carbohydrates. So it gives us the disaccharides. And same for fats, what happens? Fat is converted into diglycerides. First it is diglyceride. Di means 2, in the presence of lipases. Again it should be converted into monoglyceride, that is 1, right? So again it is converted into monoglycerides with the help of the lipases. And next one is nucleases. Nucleases acts in the pancreatic juice, acts on the nucleic acids to form what? Nucleotides and nucleosides. So nucleic acid in the presence of nucleases, they give nucleotides and again nucleosides. Okay. The enzymes in the succus entericus. Succus entericus are otherwise called as intestinal juice. On the end products of the above reactions to form a respective simpler absorbable forms. The final steps in digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelium of the intestine. So it occurs where? In the mucosal epithelium, the very simplest form to absorb by the various parts of the body. Like dipeptides, this comes from the proteins, right? See, dipeptides. So these end products will convert into very simpler form so that the body parts can occur, they can utilize easily for various activities. Like peptidides, in the presence of peptidases gives the amino acid. Amino acid is for proteins. Proteins, maltose, it is glucose and glucose, it is a carbohydrates. Lactose also is a carbohydrates. Lactase, glucose plus galactose, and then sucrose, sugar, it is a sugar content. In the presence of sucrase, it forms glucose and fructose. Next one is nucleotides. It will form nucleosides and then sugars plus bases. Di and monoglycerides form in the presence of lipases form what? Fatty acids and then glycerol. The breakdown of the biomacromolecules. What is biomacromolecules? It is nothing but proteins, carbohydrates, fats, nucleic acid, etc. mentioned above occurs in the duodenum region. So all these breakdown, digestion occurs in the small intestine. So majority of the absorption and digestion occurs in the small intestine only. In the small intestine, it is the first part of it, that is duodenum. And the simpler substances thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum. First in the duodenum, it is digested. After it is digested, it is absorbed by the second layer of the small intestine called as what? Jejunum, and then the ileum. Digestion occurs in duodenum, and other two are followed by absorption. So what happens? The undigested and unabsorbed substances are passed into the small intestine. So whatever absorption the small intestine can do, it absorbs, digests everything whichever that can do. After that, the undigested and unabsorbed particles are passed into large intestine, but majority of absorption and digestion occurs in small intestine only. So no significant activity occurs in the large intestine. Okay, we'll see what are the functions this large intestine does. First, it absorption of the water and some minerals and certain drugs. So digestion doesn't occur in the large intestine. So what does it do? It just absorbs the water from the undigested particles and also some minerals and certain drugs. And also it helps in the segregation of mucus, which helps in adhering the waste. In before slide, we saw the adhering of the food particles, but in this large intestine, this mucus helps in adhering the waste, because so that the waste won't split out everywhere, won't scatter. So they will be formed into one single thing. So it helps in adhering the waste, that is undigested particles, together and lubricating it for easy passage. The undigested, unabsorbed substance is called as feces. Feces enters into the cecum. Cecum is a part where the symbiotic microorganisms are present of the large intestine through ileocecal valve. Ileum, it is the last part of small intestine, and then cecal, it is the first part of the large intestine. So in between them there is a valve which like a door like thing which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. So what happened, once the it enters into the cecum, it shouldn't go back to the ileum, right? So there is one door. If this undigested particle or called as feces once enters into the fecus, the valve will be shut down, so it doesn't flow back to the ileum. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. Defecation is removal of the waste from the digestive system. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control only. Neural, these are CNS, and hormonal means hormones which is produced by our body for proper coordination. So for all the process to happen in the body, there should be one coordination, right? Like what happens if this liver and the stomach simultaneously do their work? No, it is like step by step. So there should be a coordination, and for the different parts. Okay, the sight and the smell or the presence of the food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of saliva. What happens if you see a food, a delicious food, or if you smell the food, will be very much attractive, right, to eat or to eat that food, and there will be so much secretion of the saliva. So that is what this line tells us. The gastric and the intestinal secretions also stimulated by the neuronal signal. So whatever we are impressed and there will be excess secretion, it is due to the neural signals only. The muscular activities of different parts of the alimentary canal can also moderated by the neural mechanism, both local and through CNS, and the hormonal control of this excretion. The hormonal control of the secretion of the digestive juice is carried out by the local hormones which is produced by the gastric and the intestinal mucosa. The next topic what we are going to see is absorption of the digestive products. So whatever or whichever organs, how much does it absorb the food particles, we will be seeing in this topic. Okay, absorption is the process by which the end products of the digestion passes through the intestinal mucosa into the blood and the lymph. So the digestive product, that is the end product, means nutrients, the nutrients which have been absorbed or digested from the food particles which we eat, passes through the intestinal mucosa to lymph or blood. Okay, it is carried out by passive, like this passive process, active or facilitated transport. There are various type of mechanisms the nutrients has been passed to our blood. Passive, where there is no use of ATP, no energy is required here, but in active the use of ATP is utilized here, but facilitated by use of carrier proteins. We will be seeing that in this slide. Some amounts of the monosaccharides like carbohydrates like glucose, amino acids and some electrolytes like chloride ions are generally absorbed by the simple diffusion. They have been absorbed. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradient. Gradient means change in quantity. Change in quantity represent a gradient. So what happens here is, there will be in one area there will be higher concentration, another area there will be lower concentration. So that is what change in the quantity. So concentration means concentration will be higher in one part and lower in the another part. So however, some substances like glucose, amino acids are absorbed with the help of the carrier protein. I said, right, that process is called as facilitated transport. So this mechanism is called as the facilitated transport, and the transport of water depends upon the osmotic gradient. Osmotic gradient is nothing but the difference in the concentration between two solutions either side of the semi-permeable membrane, and the active transport occurs against the concentration. It occurs against the concentration gradient, so this needs an energy, so that is ATP. Various nutrients like amino acid, monosaccharides like glucose, electrolytes like sodium are absorbed in the blood by this mechanism. Which mechanism? Active transport, which utilizes the ATP. And fatty acids and glycerols, being insoluble, they cannot be absorbed in the blood. So they are insoluble in the blood, so they are not absorbed. So what happens is they have to convert into a simpler form, right? The fatty acids are first incorporated into small droplets called as micelles. Small droplets, it will be converted into small droplets, okay? And after that what happens is, which moves into the intestinal mucosa. The small droplets will, after conversion, will move into intestinal mucosa. After that, there will be a, okay, that small droplets are covered by a protein covering. You'll see they are reformed into a very small protein coated globules called as the chylomicrons. So once they reach into the intestinal mucosa, they are converted into chylomicrons, and later they will be transported into the lymph vessel, that is lacteal. Lacteal we saw, right? Inside the villi, it is a network of capillaries and then like blood vessels and also lymph. So they will be transported there in the villi. These lymph vessels ultimately release the absorb substances into the bloodstream. So the fat and that chylomicron enters into the lacteals. From there they will release the absorbed particles into the blood. Absorption of substances takes place in different parts of the alimentary canal, like what? Mouth, intestine, small intestine, large intestine. But however, maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine only. So maximum absorption. So what happens? The first part of the small intestine, that is a C-shaped duodenum, absorbs the maximum particles, and that digested particles, thus digested particles are being absorbed by the second and the third part of the small intestine, nothing but jejunum and ileum. Okay, the summary of the absorption in different parts of the system, like how in which organ, okay, in particular organ how much particles have been absorbed or digested, we'll see in this. Mouth, certain drugs coming in contact with the mucus, that is saliva of the mouth and lower side of the tongue, are absorbed by the blood capillaries lining them. Below the tongue there are minute blood capillaries is present. So some of the drugs are absorbed in the mouth itself. Stomach, what does the stomach absorb means? It absorbs water, simple sugar. You must see here, simple sugar, water and alcohol only takes place in the stomach. And small intestine, we saw in the previous slide, like small intestine, in the small intestine only maximum of absorption occurs, maximum of digestion and absorption occurs. Principal organ for absorption of nutrients, and the digestion is completed here, and the final product of the digestive products such as glucose, fatty acids, fructose, glycerol, amino acids are absorbed through the mucosa into the bloodstream and the lymph nodes. And also large intestine, what we saw in earlier slides, large intestine there is no significant activities, but it also occurs what? Water and then certain drugs and also minerals and water. Yes, that's all. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues which utilize them for their activities. From here all the food particles have been digested and absorbed. From that digested, and from that the nutrients are being absorbed and utilized by the various parts of our body to undergo various actions like growth, repair of tissues, giving energy to walk, eat, speak, to take class, etc. Okay, this process is called as what? Assimilation. The process of other tissues which utilize the particular nutrients from the food is called as assimilation. The digestive waste that is solidified into coherent feces will go and store in the rectum for few temporarily, and once the neural signal sends the signal to send out the feces, there will be some reflex action. So in the rectum initiate a neural reflex causing an urge or desire for its removal, that is defecation, and the ejection of feces to the outside through the anal opening, that is called defecation, as I said, is a voluntary process, and it is carried out by a mass peristaltic movement. Peristaltic movements means wavy movement. And before we saw what is the digestive system, and the digestive system consists of two parts, alimentary canal and an associated gland. We saw all that, and we also saw how much particles have been absorbed and digested in each organs. Now we came to the last part of this chapter, that is disorders of the digestive system. What are the disorders, or what are the disease we'll be getting in our digestive system? We'll see. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common element, means disease, due to bacteria or viral infection. The infection are also caused by parasites. Parasites are disease causing pathogens of the intestine like tapeworm, hookworm, roundworm, threadworm, pinworm, etc. These are the worms which causes disease in our intestinal tract. Okay, jaundice. The first disease what we're going to see is jaundice. Jaundice is due to the excess accumulation of bile pigments and all. So when the bile is too much, that is is present in the liver, which is too much, this type of jaundice occurs. And what are the signs or symptoms is like the person eyes become yellow, turns yellow, and even the skin turns into yellow, and there will be urine be extreme yellow in color. So these are due to the deposits of the bile pigment in one's body, that is jaundice. And the main part is affected is liver. Okay, and the next is vomiting. Vomiting, I think you people know, like vomiting will be like when you take too much of food, or when the food is not digested, when you feel like it's not digested and you don't want to vomit, you will do it voluntarily, but it also comes involuntary sometimes. So it is the ejection of the stomach contents through the mouth, and this reflex action is controlled by Momit center, which is in the medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata is here below the feeling of nausea. Nausea means a sensation to vomit, but it's not vomiting. It's also a sensation. We are prone to vomit. Precedes the vomiting. And the diarrhea, I think diarrhea also, you know, like excess of feces will be in a liquid manner, which goes out from our body, including our electrolytes. So when diarrhea, the person becomes very much dehydrated, and they'll feel very fatigued and also tired. The abnormal frequency of the bowel movement, which is increased liquidity of the fecal discharge, is known as diarrhea, and also reduces the absorption of the food. And the next is constipation. Constipation is just opposite to diarrhea. Diarrhea, it is liquidity of the fecal, but here it doesn't come out. It will be retained in the colon itself. In constipation, the feces are retained within the colon as the bowel movement occurs irregularly. So there will be defecation will be very less. And ingestion means if we eat too much, or we'll be having the feeling we eat too much, that our stomach is very full, right? So that leads to ingestion. In this condition, the food is not properly digested, leading to the feeling of fullness. This occurs when we have this uncooked food and all, like extreme spicy foods, and also if we had stress and all. This occurs of ingestion in inadequate enzyme secretion like anxiety, food poisoning, and overeating, and also spicy foods. And we came to the last part of this chapter, that is in digestion and absorption. PEM. What is that PEM? Protein energy malnutrition. This occurs only in children. When the child doesn't have a required amount of protein into their body, this leads the child to have an extreme conditions like protein energy malnutrition. The dietary deficiency of proteins and total food calories are widespread in underdeveloped countries. So this type of syndromes or disease is seen in underdeveloped countries, because when there is poverty in the country, or even like drought and all, they'll have these kind of thing will lead to the PEM. Which are the countries are South and Southeast Asia, South America, and West and Central Africa. The protein energy malnutrition may affect the large section of population during a drought, when there is no any other source of income, famine, and political turmoil. When there is no proper government to produce to supply the food for the people. And this happened in our neighboring country, that is Bangladesh, during the liberation war, and in Ethiopia during the severe drought in the mid-80s. There were severe drought, and PEM affects infants and children. Okay, to produce what are the disease? Marasmus and Kawashica. These are the syndromes. Syndromes Marasmus and Kawashica. Marasmus is nothing but marasmus is produced by a simultaneous deficiency of proteins and calories. When the proteins and calories are not up to the level the child should have, it is not taken by the child. It is found in infants less than 1 year in age. So it will occur in infants which are below 1 year. If the mother's milk is replaced too early, so only the mother's milk contains proteins, right? So when the mother's milk is replaced soon by other food, and that food doesn't have any amount of proteins and all, the child will have this marasmus. And this often happens if the mother has a second pregnancy or childbirth when the older infant is too young. Okay, in marasmus, the protein deficiency impairs growth. This impairs the growth, so there will be no growth in the child, and also replacement of the tissue proteins will not take place, and there will be extreme emaciation of the body, wastage of the body, and then thinning of the limb bristles. See, the ribs can be seen easily, and they will be very thin, and the skin becomes dry and thin and wrinkled. If there is no nutrition what happens? Our skin automatically becomes dehydrated, wrinkled, and also very thin. Growth rate and the body rate declines considerably. So there will be not any growth, and also the weight will reduce considerably, and even growth and development of brain and mental faculties are impaired. Even the brain and mental activities also will be decreased. So when the brain is not developed or there is no any mental activities, what happens? It leads to mental retardation. We saw this about marasmus. We'll see Kawashica. Kawashica is also produced by the protein deficiency and accompanied by an calorie, but it occurs in child above 1 year. It also results from the replacement of the mother's milk by a high calorie, low protein diet in child more than 1 year deficiency. So what is the same as marasmus? The signs and symptoms are same, and there is one difference between this marasmus and Kawashica. In Kawashica, what happens is the child form a swelling all over the body. This is due to the extreme fluid accumulation of the body, that is called as edema. But marasmus, it doesn't occur. So the bulged stomach or bulged limbs or bulged legs is due to the excess accumulation of water, fluid content. And like marasmus, Kawashica shows wasting of muscles, thinning of limbs, and also failure of growth and the brain development. Signs and symptoms are same only. But unlike marasmus, some fat is still left under the skin, and that is what this swelling occurs or bulginess. Moreover, extensive edema and swelling of the body parts are seen in the child with Kawashica. I came to the end, and we'll see in the next video.